you and I are old enough to remember like early days of the internet and social media where you'd find people and meet people and go meet up in real life and build friendships. And it was
Mhm.
so cool. Like, holy shit, there's other people that care about what Terry O'Fallon is writing about. I thought I was the only one that was like downloading her thesis PDF and reading it in a coffee shop. But it turns out there's like 40 other people on the entire planet that are doing that. And I can talk to them right now.
That's great. I feel seen.
Yes, exactly. And they have interesting questions that I didn't think about, and they have interesting answers for my questions. And like, this is so cool. And that is possible to be the main experience of getting online. I get online, I connect with other human beings, I'm nourished. And then I get offline and I'm available, I'm present, I'm here with myself and with the world around me.
Mm.
Yeah, I get a chill. That's my vision for the world. Just that. Simple as
Mhm.
that.
I'm welcoming back Jordan Myska Allen to this podcast. We recorded an episode that maybe I'll share or share part of, or maybe not share, last week about UpTrust, which is the new project that you're working on. And I thought it was a great recording. I thought that, I feel like I really grokked what you were doing and why it was important and meaningful. And Jordan, in his very Jordan-esque way, which is why I love you, messaged me, I think a day later and was like, I feel like I could like give a little bit of a deeper transmission or really share from a deeper place about this work. And I I feel like I live to be in relationship with friends who wanna like sense and source from their soul place, that place within them that feels like yeah, even just in the articulation of the thing, let alone the creation of it, it feels like it's creating some generative goodness in the world. So here we are.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really appreciative in your willingness just right away, like, yeah, sure, let's do it. That I live to be in relationship with that. I feel so welcomed and supported.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's mutual. So yeah, I noticed I'm just taking a breath just to calm myself. And I just got off a call with Forrest and was just sharing a beautiful message exchange with a friend of mine yesterday who we got into. Um, yeah, there was a way in which I impacted her totally unintentionally. And we've just been in the process of being intimate with that together. And so, like coming into this call, I feel I was just tearing up at actually the beauty of friendship right before this call started, and just like how rich it feels to be in deep connection with people that I love and get to
Mm,
experience life together with.
mm.
Um, yeah, and I don't know. That's how I'm relating to this conversation with you as a human, but also with Uptrust is like, is there a way
Yeah.
to create like moments that make us cry because they're so beautiful because of the connection and the gratitude we have for that connection. And yeah, I'll just put that out there and let you let you run.
That feels
Hmm.
so good to hear. That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And I think we can. Like, you and I and many people who are going to listen to this podcast, I mean, literally everyone has those moments where like the power and depth of friendship brings them to tears. I think you and I are lucky enough that we have like really invested in that, like more than almost anything else. What and so I don't know, I can at least speak for myself. Like I'm I'm like wealthy beyond measure in love and support. Um,
Mm,
I want to share that.
mm. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, I just wanted I just want to name that I said something very similar just a couple months ago to a potential romantic partner. We were exploring connection together, and she kind of had this moment of being like, why did you give away all your savings? And like, why didn't you invest it more in like smarter ways in stocks or whatever the fuck? And I was like, you know, I invested them in bringing together all the people that I love and like creating gatherings and community spaces where I can be a billionaire in friendship,
Yeah.
like I can just feel, and that does actually ripple down in a material level because I have no fears about being homeless. If I ever get in like a real pickle, I know that there's people all over the world that will be there to take me in. And that's such a basic but um, bountiful type of security to have. And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And even, I can feel that like, yeah, even my whole family, like people would take me in and give me a job or I would be able to provide. And I've felt that on the other side too. I have a friend that got essentially got scammed out of everything. And I was like, man, it'd be great if she moved in and I'd put her to work. Like it wouldn't be a handout. I'd be like, hey, like you're here and here's how you can contribute and we'll help you get you off your feet. And she didn't take me up on it, but um yeah, there's something like the reality of human connection and what's possible. Like we know it and we've seen it. And the tools that we create, including but not limited to being online, should, and I want to say that in a moral sense, like should, like they're not what it is, but it's like what we want to aim at, what ought to be.
Mm-hmm.
They should enhance that and they should lead to more of that.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the possibility to do that, not to make what's been created wrong, but to take what's been created and evolve it
Mm-hmm.
to
Yeah.
something that's like way unbelievably better.
Yeah. What's the felt sense in your body and your soul, like when you really sink into that better possibility?
Mm. The, the feeling I get is like rich soil,
Mm,
like putting your hands through like super dense, rich compost where it's like this is so healthy and good and it's dirt, but it's like it's messy, it's sticky, but it's also like you smell it, you can taste it, and it's like it's fertile.
what grows in that soil?
Yeah. Yeah. So I do want to be grounded in like there's like an old, I think it was like even like Plato v Aristotle, like how much is your society and like the culture you live in, like, or maybe it was Socrates v Plato. I don't remember exactly, but Socrates is kind of like you always get to choose. And then Aristotle's like, yeah, but what if you're not in a situation that trains you that you get to choose?
Mm,
And so there's something where like, I'm the recipient of an incredible amount of support um, through, yeah, financial well-being, through being born in America, through being born in the 80s, through being male, through being white, through all of that. Like, and it's part of what's allowed me to invest in like love and consciousness and incredible relationships instead of having to just get by. And I want to be careful about that too, because getting by can create some fucking incredible relationships and you can survive together. But I think the soil makes it so that everyone has a chance to kind of be in love with what is
mm,
instead of being in kind of a constant resistance to it.
mm,
I think when we're in love with what is, like what comes out is generative, creative, fresh goodness, new art, new music, new meaning, new philosophy, higher integrity, higher morals, a willingness to say no to things that just don't serve people, even if they benefit you in the short run. And I think we will do well with more of that as a species.
Hmm. Man, I'm working on a film project that basically the thesis of is to uh, transmit and envision and invite in a world in which we love what is, which paradoxically, can include the moments of feeling just fucking rage or anger at what is and all of that. It's all there to be intimate with, and to be intimate with it is to love it into presence. It's to say, like, I see you, I'm with you, I'm here. Um, and that there maybe even can be a layer of trust, of, well, uptrust, of trust, of faith even, that is the soil to help like bring people through the times when they maybe have lost that connection to love in the conventional sense that we might associate that word with, and kind of ground in like this deeper trust of the process that is unfolding, that is our lives, that is life itself. Yeah, and I'm creating, what I'm recognizing is that we might share a soul mission in a way, like it's like
Yeah,
it's like a
yeah,
mission that keeps us up at night, and a mission that wakes us up in the morning. And yeah, I hadn't recognized that in an explicit sense before, even though I felt resonance with you in so many instances. I guess what I'm curious about is, I'm doing this through a film, and hopefully through also a sense of it, trying my best to embody, these ways of being imperfectly just in my own day-to-day interactions right now, even.
yeah,
But I hadn't explicitly thought about like a film is a digital technology in a sense, but a digital social media technology that can help to bring us into a relationship to love what is. Because in a way, most digital social media is meant to make us communicate how much we hate what is in
yeah,
a way.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and I mean the what like what you said earlier about it includes all the it includes when it's true and deep, like the discomfort and the pain. Loving what is doesn't mean I have to like what is.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, so yeah, I like the direction of some inquiry you're going, and I don't. Can you keep going?
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, because there's a way in which if we say like, oh, we don't have to like what is, then well, how is that any different from, say, this present reality, right? And so what I feel in you is that you're inviting in a shift in perspective, you could say, but it's not really a mental perspective. It's more of an embodied way of being in the world. And that while it includes all the experiences one is having now, there's also a fundamentally different experience that someone can have, or that we can have together. And what
Yeah,
is that different experience?
yeah, 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 exactly. Yeah, and like philosophically, this touches on something I keep noticing in myself. I feel a deep acceptance and love of what is for the most part, and one subtle place that I'm not loving what is the not the me and the people, or the me that I project onto the people that aren't loving what is, right? Like, so somehow like suffering is the thing I'm suffering.
Hmm.
Um, so I, that's an interesting quandary that I'm working with in myself, and probably shows up in the design of the platform. Like, there's probably some, and I can feel even in like, the way I've been talking about it, even on our first podcast recording is more like, the classic, like, here's the problem. I can lay out the problem and, like, blah, 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 how it is now. And then here's the solution. Here's where we can move towards. Here's what's good. And this is not as good. And this is better. And that's cool. Like, I like that. But there still feels like I'm doing this kind of opposition dance, which is not necessarily what I want to do. I do want to invite, I think most of us have a lot of really great conversations come from dissonance, from disagreement, where there's enough trust and there's enough love and there's enough, like, assuming good faith or assuming they're intelligent and wise, that you kind of lean in together, and then eventually there's often a flipping of polarities, or, like, there's a creative synthesis where you realize, like, it's not I don't know, you could take even something like, well, global warming doesn't exist versus global warming does exist, and you realize, oh, actually, what we both value, like, human well-being, and we both value, like, future generations, like, having a good experience of life. And, like, actually, even we can continue to disagree about this while we can move forward on this third thing. So the art form, like, you're making this film, and it's art, but it's also got a mission. And in a way, like, we're making a platform as art. It's like, it's the thing out of wholeness and abundance that myself and my team have been called to do, as an offering for ourselves and for humanity to do with whatever they want, just like any good piece of art, and make use of how they will. But also, like art, there's some sort of, you do get to, if I do a big white angel that says love on it, it's going to be really hard to be like, that art is an example of the devil, like, hating everyone. You're like, you could use that interpretation. It's certainly available. And so there's some sense in the way we're right. We're designing it in such a way that it's easier to have those generative conversations that lead to nourishment, that lead to you crying because you're so moved by humanity. And it's
Yeah.
harder to have the conversations that lead to more polarization and more distrust and more discombobulation about what even is true and real and good anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's like I think just a simple, almost silly. I feel silly almost saying this, but yeah, it's like growing up in an abusive household and growing up in a generally loving and caring household, and perfect, albeit, are both experiences of the divine perfection of what is, they're both love in a sense. But obviously, there's a natural care and compassion and just basic human well-being that wants the best for people. And I think if we can bring that common sense wisdom, it's basically just a common sense, basic goodness,
Hmm.
compassion,
Hmm.
compass to our systems and our technologies and our politics, like that would feel uh, um, obvious in a way, but extremely radical in other ways.
Right. Yeah, no, that's exactly it. Obvious and extremely radical. Like, that's, if UpTrust embodies that, we've done our job. It should be so simple and so straightforward, and it should be extremely radical.
Mhm.
And the thing you're talking about with the obviousness is, one place that this perspective comes from in me is growing up being a real fan of A Course in Miracles. And The Course in Miracles is this, for those who don't know, it's this kind of crazy, essentially automatic writing, like kind of quasi-channeled spiritual text. But it's very much, life is an illusion, and what's real is love or God. Um, but it's really cool because it embraces the human experience, and it's like, in the way that you're saying, like, yeah, we're in a dream. It's nice to have a happy dream rather than a nightmare.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
That's, I mean, maybe we should have been happydream.com instead of uptrusting.
I think that would be a slightly different content matter. But you would probably have way more money and way more users by now.
That's right.
Oh man.
Happyending.com. Wait a
Yeah.
second.
Oh my God. Well, okay. I might take full disclosure for the viewers. I might take this part and chop it up and put it in the beginning because I just think it would be helpful to just have
Yeah.
a 1 minute pitch on what we're talking about. What is UpTrust? Just a very practical nuts and bolts.
Yeah. Yeah, let me give it. And I still am like grateful to you for the option, whether this very sentence gets included or not, to like practice like pausing and coming from that deeper place. Like
Yeah, great.
when I feel like you said the soul, like, okay, so when I feel the soul, what's the soul of UpTrust? And can I speak about the nuts and bolts from and as that?
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, today, if somebody anyone who listens to this podcast can go to uptrusting.com/join waitlist. And what they're signing up for is the chance to get on a platform for discussion, for having really high quality discussions. One of the big differences they're going to see from, say, like a Reddit or a Twitter or a Facebook is that they're going to see roughly how much they trust any given piece of content in an auto tagged domain. So maybe this gets tagged as social media and love and whatever, and you'll see roughly on a scale from 1 to 10, like how much you trust me in all of these three topics, and you'll see roughly how much the average person or your average reference group trusts this stuff. You'll have the chance to give the site feedback constantly on um, if you agree with that rating, like whether you do trust or you don't trust this particular person in this particular content. And that can be, it's very nuanced. Like, well, hold on, I'm going a little too far into the details.
What's the impact that UpTrust will have on people's lives?
My sense is a lot of people get on social media often to like avoid feeling something. but but that's not what I was intending to say. A lot of people get on looking for some sort of connection to other humans, right?
Mhm.
And there's, you and I are old enough to remember like early days of the internet and social media where you'd find people and meet people and go meet up in real life and build friendships. And it was
Mhm.
so cool. Like, holy shit, there's other people that care about what Terry O'Fallon is writing about. I thought I was the only one that was like downloading her thesis PDF and reading it in a coffee shop. But it turns out there's like 40 other people on the entire planet that are doing that. And I can talk to them right now.
That's great. I feel seen.
Yes, exactly. And they have interesting questions that I didn't think about, and they have interesting answers for my questions. And like, this is so cool. And that is possible to be the main experience of getting online. I get online, I connect with other human beings, I'm nourished. And then I get offline and I'm available, I'm present, I'm here with myself and with the world around me.
Mm.
Yeah, I get a chill. That's my vision for the world. Just that. Simple as
Mhm.
that.
Yeah. Beautiful. I feel that I'm not on any social media, and so I don't not able to relate to it in my current chapter of life. It's been 5, 6 years since I've had social media, but I feel that with podcasts often, not all the time, but a lot of the podcasts that I'll listen to, I'll feel really nourished. I'll hear you enforced in dialogue or something, and I'll
Mm-hmm.
feel more ready to be in connection with the physical world, while taking in this sort of yeah, this medium, and to be able to actually dialogue with others online in a way that kind of gets me excited to get off my ass and like be be in reality and connect and feel joy and like bring that into relationship in real life. Even if what that relationship is with my tree outside or with the sun on my skin or with my pillow while I'm
Yes.
taking a nap, it doesn't need to be like some extroverted social butterfly thing. Yeah, that feels like I notice I just feel more alive in my own body hearing that.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you. Even I noticed the trees and the sun, as you said that. And what's coming to me, and I hope, people listening to this will get that from this podcast. There's a sense of being resourced. Like there's a source that we all know and come from, whether you want to call it presence or God or some sort of like, I don't know, maybe there's the Tao or some sort of philosophical term you have for it, but there's a sense of being sourced. There's going back to or remembering the already empty good. I was telling my son one example of this. I know I just interrupted myself, but my son was getting upset about a bunch of noise. There was like a construction. He's like, it's too much noise. And I was just like, hey, he's 3.5. And I was like, hey, bud, can you hear the silence that the noise happens in? And he was
Mm,
like, huh. I was like, yeah, you notice like no matter how much noise there is, there's always more silence that can hold it.
mm,
And he was like, oh, I get it. And you could see his whole body just relaxed.
mm,
And then he ran off to play. He was like no longer bothered.
mhm.
And like that silence was there all along. It just was super not obvious because there's like a jackhammer doing this. And like most of our day, a lot of us were focused on like there's an email ping in my phone and I'm buzzing and I've got a deadline and I've got whatever bills to pay and I got like, for me, like the kids to go pick up and like somebody's sick and I just call the doctor and blah, blah, blah. But that source, that silence is here anyway.
Mhm.
And what if we could just tap into that on our phones instead of avoiding this and getting more of it?
Mhm.
Or even forget that instead of just what if? Maybe you already do that. Maybe Instagram already works for you. You follow the right people and like, you like I get a lot of otter when I get on Instagram, it feeds me otters because it thinks I really like otters. It's
Uh,
really cute. I get lots of really
uh,
cute otter videos. I do like
that's
otters.
great.
Now I like them even more.
Uh, that's hilarious. That is hilarious. The
Uh,
Otters PR team is really doing a good job, I guess.
that's right. Yeah.
So I have a question on that. I absolutely love what you shared. And there's just a moment that arose 3 years ago. I was at this intentional community in Costa Rica, and my friend was like, "You're not on Instagram? That's crazy. Like, I think you should give it another try. It's really changed a lot and it's blah blah blah." So I said, "All right." And I made a new account and I had it for about 3 days. And she told me all these different spiritual accounts to follow. And I did, and I got, Adyashanti and Ram Dass and, Sadhguru and whatever. And the experience, though, was that I was just scrolling one epic spiritual quote after the next, and it was all so good that it actually just became watered down nothing, and all became meaningless because there's so much.
Yeah.
It's like it's like
Ugh.
it's like instead of one scoop of honey in your tea, you actually just have one drop of tea in your honey, and it's like, you know what I mean? So how does something like UpTrust, this, how can we relate to, because that's almost a natural move, right? Is when we feel deprived of something, we want so much of it. But then how
Yeah.
do we create integrated technology that is not just spoon feeding us cocaine,
Man, I
even if it's
love this
spiritual
question.
cocaine?
It's such a good question, and it's such a great example. So let's use it. I also want to note that like it's without being a little bit more conscious, like I'm gonna fall into the same trap right now. I'm going to be like, UpTrust, when you get on, is going to do some amazing thing for you, and it leaves you in this kind of wanting, like now is not enough. And that is not what I want to create. Like, yes, I want everyone here to come onto the platform and use it and get served and nourished by it if it serves and nourishes you. I don't want you to use it if it doesn't. Um, so the first thing that comes is like to have integrity as a creator, as a designer. Like, man, I'm a huge Kendrick
Mhm.
Lamar fan, and I have been for years. So like, I love the whole like Drake beef thing. We've talked about this before. But he just did the Super Bowl, this like this huge event in the US, and it was another great example where he showed up as an artist. Like he had a message um for America, and like it was beautiful as art. And if you had no idea what it meant, you still thought it was a beautiful piece of art. And there's like every move and every visual, like the dancers, what they were wearing was like intentional and had integrity. And so, for example, one thing that actually on our beta using UpTrust, one of my friends pointed out to me that I didn't even notice, is that none of the women were scantily clad. There were dancers, and none of them were wearing high heels, and they still looked great. They were sexy and they were doing cool dances, but it was like super respectful for the dancers themselves. It was just like so brilliant and so high integrity. Like Kendrick has always talked about that, and he even criticizes Drake for not doing that in his rap battle beef. So it's like that is the answer. Is like have integrity
Mhm.
and don't compromise.
Hmm. And you're speaking as the artist that is creating UpTrust, well, part of a team. And so can that be, yeah, can you walk the talk of that?
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I mean, with all respectfulness towards our like imperfections, like we are definitely gonna miss the boat sometimes, miss the mark. The literal definition of sin. Um, Hopefully out of ignorance and out of unconsciousness, and not out of malice or greed or something like that. But and the counterbalance is that there is a there's a necessity, I think, to bridge. Like I really love and look up to in a lot of ways, like John Mackey as a leader of Whole Foods, not anymore, but um, he was vegan and running a co-op, and he realized that like we need to have like a supermarket that also sells meat, and we're going to do healthy meat, even though he doesn't eat meat and he's against it, because there needed to be a bridge, right? At the time, people were like, Whole Foods really changed the game, I think, in natural foods world. Like um, before Whole Foods, you had to go get your like regular stuff, your milk and your eggs and your blah blah blah, or whatever your like staples
Yeah.
were at the grocery store, and then you had to go to your Whole Foods type co-op and then go get that stuff. And it was like people had to, shop at two stores for the most part, or be like super radical. And John kind of rightfully was like in like visioned that like, hey, this is not going to work. Like we have to do something better for at least for Americans. And so that bridge kind of sped things up in a certain way.
Yeah.
Um, I think probably our species would have eventually evolved to like have Whole Foods be generally like not the brand, but like
Yeah.
healthy food be more mainstream. So yeah, there's something about that balance between like don't compromise and be an artist and have integrity. And I think Kendrick is a good example of this. Like it was a great halftime show, simply as a halftime show, and it was a message.
Hmm.
Whole Foods is a great supermarket, simply as a supermarket, and they they were like pushing forward the nature of healthy eating and supply
Yeah.
chains and all that stuff. And so UpTrust is attempting to do the same thing. We're just a great place to have conversations online,
Mm.
and we've shifted the algorithms in such a way that they consistently reward goodness and humanity rather than basically shittiness.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. We're just a good place to have conversations online. That feels like it just really landed in my system, the simplicity of that. And
Hmm.
yeah, I just want to mirror that, that my body lit up in response to that. Yeah. You know, a question that keeps popping up is yeah, I'm around I in my communities and my friendships, I have a lot of people where we talk about ideas like this. Like, you know what would be great if the world had, and then but then it kind of ends there. We don't actually go and do the thing and put in all the crazy amount of time and energy and effort and money and all that and risk and vulnerability. Um, why why you? Like why are you the person that is really spearheading this and actually actualizing it? And I don't mean so much from a resume perspective, but more of like the constitution of your very being or the nature of Jordan-ness. Like why is he well equipped to take this on?
Yeah. I asked myself this question because I really resisted it for quite some time. I was very happy with my life and what I was doing and how I was impacting the world. But it's like I couldn't put it down. And so here I am. And I remain extremely open to it being a, a spiritual lesson for me. Like, um, it, it may, it may be that, yeah, I'm here to, like, the reason why is simply because I need to learn whatever I need to learn through this journey.
Mm.
Um, but setting that aside for a moment, let's assume that I'm here to be successful and actually, impact the world in the way that we're hoping to in such a positive way. Then I think the why is because I am uniquely situated to make this happen. I think I have the right developmental maturity. Like I can see meta systems in a way that a lot of people can't. I've heard stories of early Facebook, in like things that engineers did, which if I could share them, but it makes you sick to your stomach, and the kind of manipulating people's emotions type of thing to sell ads. They weren't doing it maliciously. They were just like, oh shit, we have to sell these ads, and like, how do we do it? And like, we're under the deadline, and
Yeah.
um, so it's very innocent, and I luckily am in a position to not make that particular mistake. I can see a little bit like the second and third order consequences. A lot of people who have this kind of developmental maturity are have kind of let go of the devils in the details. Like they can enter a deep visioning space. I think Ken Wilber is a good example of this. Like incredible inspiration to me. Um, One of the most influential people in my lives, and I've heard he was not a very good organizational leader. When he tried to run Integral Institute, it was like, oh, like that's just not his strength. His strength is in writing and making meaning and meditating and all this stuff. um, I have experience running organizations, and I understand. In a lot of ways I got lucky. I get trained by rationalists who
Mm.
are on less wrong and things like that. I'm like, okay, this is all a good thing you just said, but what's the nuts and bolts, like gears level mechanics of how this works? What's the physics of it?
Mm.
It's great to like, yeah, let's have a culture and let's have a field and it's going to be great and that's necessary and it's important. But now, like, this algorithm is going to choose literally billions of times how to order this feed, like what comes first. And there's like linear algebra that determines that. And there's a physics here, like what A leads to B leads to C. Yeah, for whatever reason, I've been trained to also think in that way.
Mhm.
And I think that's part of what's required to make this happen.
Mm. Gorgeous.
And I think the last thing that comes to mind is that I just actually care about having a foot in the mainstream. So that helps me empathize. Like I think there's some really cool experiments and like protocols and things that people have come up with that are great, and maybe we'll use them or borrow on them or build on them in the future, but they're just not mainstream enough. They're too fringe.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a really I just feel like I know you better through that answer. So that's a cool second order ripple.
Hell yeah, good.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe another version of this question is you have the capacities, you could say, and the constitution to do something like this, and then there's the idea. What's the why, the energy that actually motivates those two
Mm,
interpenetrating into day in and day out grind on this project?
yeah, I just uh I just don't. It's like I don't want to suffer,
Mm,
and I like I said earlier, like I'm suffering. Like I see the cycles of degradation of like civility and ugh, I'm like I almost want to throw up when I feel into it, of loneliness, of like inability for people to connect or be with themselves. And I know that there's another option. I worry a lot about, not a lot, but I do worry a good bit that like this puts me in a kind of drama triangle savior role with like the world, and it's actually about like my own suffering. And I just live that tension. Like
mhm,
I fucking care. I care about people. Probably it's just a happy dream, and the point is for me to be happy, or it's a dream, and not to try to save other people because they're just like extensions of the one mind. Um and yeah, I for some reason I fucking care a lot about humans
mhm,
and our ability to come together and have our uniqueness be generative towards like better futures.
mhm,
I feel like I feel like that doesn't touch on it quite. And what I can say is I feel my heart and it aches.
mhm. I'm just connecting to this humility and yeah, what we're both doing through our own projects, because it feels like for UpTrust to be successful, not to use a word like that, um, it's like, well, we also need to create healing containers for people to work through that, and we need to like revamp the education system, and we need to have healthier food so that we are not like physically ill and then in contracted states. And it's like you actually when I really sense into the depth and the meaning and the mission of UpTrust, it's the whole, all of a sudden it feels like a drop in this giant sea. And my awareness goes to how can the whole sea rise, not necessarily as like one sweeping grace, but actually as this drop by drop network effect of like a million miracles, a million
Yes,
miracles
yes,
times a million years, and a lot of prayer, and a lot of faith, and a lot of holding it with lightness, holding it as this beautiful dream that we're fully living into at the same time. Um,
yeah.
yeah.
So well said. I mean, we're so aligned, and yeah, in a lot of ways, what my hope is that my fantasy is that Uptrust is the kind of mycelial network or that the aspen roots for like, yeah, okay, we need healing or even post healing, like you've talked about containers. we want to do something different with education, and we want to do something with the food systems. Like how how do we that we're like literally sharing resources between like helping these disparate organizations and thinkers and like people that seem to be against each other connect and realize their common ground and like and learn from each other and change each other's minds and be able to collaborate. And so we're able to, and then once that happens, we can feed that over here. Hey, look, this is what happened in the food system world. I wonder if this applies to education, you know? And like it's just there's this sense of like um, being the neural network or being the road system. It's not sexy in that sense, but like it's like yeah, right now we really do have a lot of the things that we need to raise that ocean, but we don't really know how to put them together.
Mm. Yeah, and it feels like communication, there's like maybe consciousness is the base, but then just right above that is like communication,
Right.
And of course, they're not separate. But it feels like it's just a fundamental building block of evolution, you could say. And Jordan, I was just experiencing, I just did a gathering with this Boulder Lighthouse collective that I've been helping steward for 2 years now. We just had our fifth gathering. And what I noticed is that the collective did most of its communication energetically, and the need for words, the need for actually like rational explanation has just been decreasing over time.
Mm,
And it becomes more of like just a clarifying thing that can just help affirm what's already felt, or it becomes an artistic expression, like a share of beauty that is an offering into the space. And I've also been listening to the Telepathy Tapes podcast. Have you heard of them?
I've heard of
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the basic premise is that folks who um, are or folks who are mute and are mostly don't talk, that are also autistic, often highly autistic, um, can develop telepathy capacities and actually communicate and share in more of a subtle, energetic, telepathic type of realm. And so it's just kind of, I'm not saying that our group is telepathic necessarily, but those like we're heading in that direction, I guess you could say. And not that that's an intention that we have in any way, shape, or form. It's just kind of an unfolding. So it makes me curious about how we can bring those new forms of communication that might not just be text on screen and into a system like UpTrust, so that we can begin to even like it's like an embodied communication that can also exist online.
Yeah. 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 I think it'd be so cool. I don't know. You know, I think we talked a little bit about this before, but I'm like, yeah, are there like cool ways to use like maybe instead of text on the just text on a screen, it's like the text is like it automatically creates a cool like visualization and different colors mean different feelings. And so you can kind of get the tone the way you would in person.
Mm.
Or, you know, is there some way to actually receive the energy? Like, is there some
Audio notes even.
right audio notes? Yeah. But, or like, yeah, when you're, yeah. So maybe audio carries the subtle energy signature, or maybe there's some sort of like cosmic address where once you know where to point, you can, you know, I don't know. I'm excited for all of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, cool.
And it's like partially the difference for us is going to be we're going to be following this curiosity and this excitement and playing and being like, how do we increase the bandwidth of communication so that we're moving towards more truth and more beauty and more goodness and more love and more justice?
Yeah.
Um, and that's just so it's so much easier to do that when that's our mission than
Mm.
when we're like our mission is to make a shitload of money, as much money as possible, as fast as possible.
Mhm.
And we're gonna make money. It's gonna be awesome. We're gonna reward our investors and we're gonna. I think money is like calories for the body. Like I love food and I love money, um, and I don't live for food. Food supports me so I can live.
Mhm.
So yeah, like money will support us so that we can figure out these kind. Okay, so telepathy tapes in the hill. Like, is there a way to like do to incorporate that into UpTrust? Like, what a cool question. Let's see if we can. You know? Yeah, I think this is a really beautiful world too that I want to live in. Like, where the biggest companies or even the smallest company. I mean, to some extent we live in this world. Like, I think I really look up to Patagonia or like
Mhm.
as an example where they just constantly make cool, creative decisions that go against all business logic and then often are successful for it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, the more we have companies doing that, like these companies are, we moved from nation state to people can complain and say corporate states or whatever, but like essentially we have a, 3.5 or orange level kind of um, global power structure. And imagine if the global superpowers were like oriented towards like how can we make the world a better place? And that's like their primary driver.
Yeah. Totally. I was just thinking about I have this Patagonia light puffy jacket and I've probably owned it for 8 years. I've gotten it fixed. I sent it in to be repaired once. And I wear it. It's a 3 season jacket, really. Even in the summertime on cool nights, I sometimes wear it. And somebody not too long ago was kind of making a joke, like, oh, Patagucci or whatever. And I was just like, that is so fucking dumb because if you actually think about this one jacket and you divide it by the amount of times I've worn it over 8 years, the fact that it's been repaired, the fact that it can be repaired infinitely into the future, it's the cheapest article of clothing I've ever purchased in my entire life in terms of its
Yeah,
value. And like, I just,
yeah,
yeah, like if our whole, or even just bigger parts of our economy could operate with that awareness, like, wow, wow.
right. Yeah, and then once you start factoring in externalities, like okay, so I buy some other coat that like a 5-year-old sewed and
Right.
getting paid like 50 cents or who knows, and what kind of power supply, like what's the cost of that? It's cheap in some sense, but that's because the actual cost, I'm just borrowing against the future. Like, someone is going to have to take care of that kid when they go crazy or when they lose their hand, and someone's going to have to clean up that environment. And
Mhm.
like, I don't happen to be paying for it now, but humanity will. So it just kind of depends on where we draw the boundary around the self. Like, who is the self that is getting the deal here?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great question. Hmm.
And we ask this question a lot in Uptrust because we want to really like serve humanity as a customer, but also serve an individual who just wants to make money on TikTok or whatever. Like the interests need to be aligned, and there's an ethic that I playfully like to call the ethic of endosymbiosis.
Say it again. Endosymbiosis.
Yeah,
Okay, define that
which
for us.
basically it just means what's good for the individual is good for the whole, and what's good for
Oh
the
yeah.
whole is good for the individual. Where they're mutual, and it can't be one or the other. If it's only good for the individual, eventually the whole dies and the individual dies. So I think
Mhm.
actually evolution selects for this.
Mhm.
And if it's only good for the whole, then individuals aren't rewarded, and eventually the collective dies because the individuals don't thrive.
Mhm.
So I think that this is, there's something like this is a first brush at my own like sense of like, yeah, there is a kind of post pluralistic ethics.
Mhm.
It's not just anything goes. Like if you only look out for you, that's not sustainable in the long run,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's not even good for you in the long run.
Yeah. I just want to invite in your direction and just ask if there's any places or territories or dimensions of ways of relating to UpTrust that, yeah, you feel like would be juicy to explore, to dive into.
Thank you. The thing that's coming to me right as you're feeling that is, I'd love to. I don't even know what I have to offer, but I'd love to offer people listening to this, including me re-listening to this in the future, something that they can take from this right now today, even if they're not on UpTrust. So, like, given what we've been talking about, like,
Yeah.
how is you, dear listener, like, how's your life better, and how can it continue to get better? Um, yeah, because there's something that's a little sad in me. Like, I mean, UpTrust is definitely hoping to address this, but like, I'm like you. I don't get on. I have all the accounts, but I don't use Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I don't even have a TikTok account. I was like, ugh. But there's a lot of really beautiful, deep thinking people that just simply don't share their perspectives and their way of making sense of things because it's too dangerous.
Mm.
So maybe my invitation is for people to share, to take a risk, to find a way where it's safe. Don't just randomly poop out on Twitter because it's going to suck for you, but like find a place where it's safe, whether it's UpTrust or not, whether it's a personal conversation, whether it's your journal, to like bring out a nuanced perspective that feels like it would be scary or get you canceled or something. And I want to some a story I want to bring about this. Like we've been doing these experiments with UpTrust online and offline, and one of them is we hosted a dinner. We've been like doing these kind of private dinners, like inviting some like influential people in Austin, like 10 to 12 people to have these um, intimate discussions about what we think of as like impossible conversations with the M in parentheses. And what one of my friends last night really, he was like, "Oh yeah, we had this conversation last night. We did one last night, and you know, it was good, but it was kind of triggery, and people were sharing their opinions. Things coming, you know, Kanye and the swastika is coming up. And then there's a Israeli in the room that's getting triggered, and it's a good conversation. But it was like finally in the last 10 minutes, we've been together for like 2.5 hours roughly. It's like the armor came down, and people like
Mm.
really opened up and like shared themselves and their real opinions. We were talking about cultural appropriation at one point, and it was like you could see almost like everyone had shared their view, and then it was like they shared themselves.
Mhm.
And one of the things that my friend brought up, he's like, it's almost like when if you talk to a friend who's like just gotten high and thought about something a bunch, but never talked to anyone else. They're almost like a tree in Madagascar, is the metaphor he used, where like there just hasn't been contact with the world yet. And so the ideas are like, they're kind of weird, but they're also like, it's like I've pre I've pre had the conversation with all the naysayers and the disagreeers. And and because I'm anticipating that, I'm also projecting that out onto everyone. And I'm not relating to them. I'm relating to my assumption of how they're going to respond to me. And of course, that ironically invites that kind of response.
Mhm.
So part of the invitation to like find a safe place to bring these things out is to get intimacy with these ideas and to get feedback so they become healthier before they kind of burst.
Mhm.
So I don't know, like maybe like one person was mentioning how their friend, one person in this conversation, I'm not going to name names, were tends to lean left, and so they are like, I have trans friends, and I have a lot of trans advocacy, and I don't know how I feel. Like I love them, I support them, but I don't know how I feel about minors with trans rights. And it's like this person couldn't felt like this is the first time they really shared it because they're like, I'm afraid if I open up about this, I'm going to lose these friendships and these people are going to feel unsupported when I actually do support and love them. But like, I just haven't been able to even have the conversation to help myself make sense of what I believe about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I notice I feel sad. Feel sadness in my upper stomach. And I have been really into politics since I was 11 years old. And I, fencing, but you have what I deeply desire is to be in a collective. I can do this one-on-one. I have people I can do this one-on-one, but to be in a collective that is coming from more or less of a not super triggered all the time, state of integrated perspective taking, where we can just go at each other with love and curiosity, but also like um, intense clarity and sharpness and power. And do that because we recognize that we're helping each other become stronger in the process, even if it means taking a hit in the moment. There's like a
Yeah.
brotherly, there's a masculine energy in that I think is in a way pervasive in our culture, and in other ways it's so the word anorexic came up, but that's not quite anemic. Anemic is the word. Yeah, it's very anemic.
Yeah.
And I just wonder how we can like re-upshift, not fall back into like a right or wrong type thing, but to like fall up into a trust network where we can take on right and
Yes.
wrong as a way of exploring, infinite possibilities of wholeness.
I love it. I love the metaphor. And it's actually a really good example of like, what are some specific things that, you know, don't exist on current social media that could or would. When you're fencing, when you go in for the attack, you're vulnerable to attack.
Mm,
And like in a conversation, what this means is if I bring you some sharp clarity, like you're in a kind of meta modern space, like you're going to I'm open to someone showing me how that's my shadow and my projection onto you, right?
mhm,
And I'm open to it. I'm also welcoming it and I'm loving it because like that is how I'm going to find my shadows. I can't fucking see them on my own. I need the mirror of other people.
yeah.
And so there's a kind of symmetry or something that like there's a mutual vulnerability where I'm like looking you in the eyes. Like if we're in a fight, like it's intimate.
Mhm,
And right now, like if somebody calls somebody out online, in a sense, you could say they're vulnerable to attack, but a, not a deep self-reflection. They're vulnerable to being attacked on the superficial level, and so it's kind of like everyone just missing each other,
mhm,
right? Because it's never there was another one of the dudes last night. Um, he was talking about how he had bought these feathered headdresses from a Native American tribe, and he never wore them. And he got defensive against someone kind of accusing him of cultural appropriation, and then or something. And it the way it turned out was he was ashamed that he didn't have the courage to wear the headdress
mm,
because he thought it was gorgeous, and he actually had some Native American like it was like I'm 13% Native American or something like that. And so like whatever retort was coming back at him in his defensiveness was not touching that what was really going on is like a deep self-judgment and a
mm,
sense that he wasn't showing up as a man and supporting what he thought was good and beautiful and sacred in the world.
mhm. Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
that's the kind of fencing that we need is like someone being able to be like, this is what seems to be what's really going on.
Yeah.
Let's be with that.
Oh, you froze for a bit.
Oh,
Okay,
let's be with
coming.
that.
Yeah, yeah, you're coming back. I want to yes and that and just say that there's other times where I truly am just actually curious about a perspective, and it's almost like the perspective is a living organism. And
Yeah.
to go into my own shadow work around it all is almost a distraction from like, wait a minute, let's just actually look at this perspective of like, should trans youth be allowed to medically transition or whatever? And like without relating that to my whiteness and all my stuff, like can we actually just talk about the thing without personalizing it to anyone that's talking about it, just for a moment. We can go there after. And it's almost like I can feel evolution wrestling, and there's these different
Yes.
perspectives. And in that little moment or little context, there's an evolutionary sort of this switch or that switch. There's like, and maybe it's not binary, but there's a spectrum, and it feels like the ideas kind of in this jockeying. And then if you just kind of multiply that times all the conversations happening around the world,
Yes.
there's this constant evolutionary process unfolding. And so, yeah, I just wonder if there's ways to yeah.
I think you've hit on
uh,
something that is a potential of conversation. Like in some ways, I feel like, it's like now people realize, oh, I can't do online conversation the same way I do in-person conversation. And it feels a lot more limited. Like you've been talking about, you miss some of the body, you miss some of the tone, you miss some of the,
mm,
but there's also things that unlock that I feel like we haven't unlocked. And this is one of them. Like we should conceivably be able to, via things being in a medium that you can revisit them,
mm,
say yes to both. Let's look at the concept and like of what is the rights of a trans youth, and let's also look at the shadow for each of us individually and collectively. And we can, it's very hard to hold all three of these conversations in a linear time format like you and I are having right now on this podcast. But when it's nonlinear and or like atemporal like it is online, I can
mm,
do this one and then I can come back a day later and do this one, and then I can come back a
mm,
day later and come back to this one, and then I can go to this one. So
mhm.
it's like this feels like a potential that we have just simply not unlocked.
Yeah, and this is where I want to push back on something that I've been thinking about this in the last podcast we did. You were talking about AI and AI kind of having a mostly pluralistic or achiever kind of consciousness. And I want to say that I trusted that, that there's something there to that. I'm not discounting it. And at the same time, the ability for AI to hold, I can prompt it with seven perspectives and then ask it to integrate all seven in a meta synthesis that also is taking into account all the documents I've uploaded about me and attuning to my uniqueness. And it's pretty phenomenal at doing that. Like I'm consistently impressed by its cognitive breadth, you could say, and the ability to integrate in milliseconds of time. And so there is a way in which I wonder if, now I'm asking it to do that. And so there's a relationship that's being developed there, and it's a little bit of a chicken or an egg thing. But I wonder if there's a way for AI to help us hold complexity in a way that's not actually too complex for our individual human minds. Yeah, or like to gently guide us into synthesized complexity, which can allow us to still be in relationship with that complexity without us having to do all the mental work to get there, which is good and important and necessary on the one hand, but also a lot of people might just stop and not even attempt to go through that.
Yes, absolutely. Like I think the answer is yes, and that's another huge potential that's untapped. Like we this it does exist on UpTrust. You can click like intensify, for example, and there's a bot that will like steelman the positions that are being
Oh,
represented
cool.
on a thread.
I love that.
Yeah, and it's really neat. Like, yeah, there's a few others. So like sounds like you've done an amazing job, getting something really powerful out of the AI. So I'm like, man, share some of that, and I wonder if we can put it into a prompt that we can then build into UpTrust that when people ask for that, they can get that help synthesizing. And then the other way this happens is like I think we might have talked about this, but the AI is already, regardless of their developmental caps, like are very good at doing summaries, right? Like kind of universally, people are like, yeah, it's pretty good at summarizing these meeting notes or whatever. And so we can take something like we've been using this example of like this the rights of minors that are trans. I don't know the right heading for it, but we can just get an overview of like, right, what are the main points, for, against, third, fourth, fifth view, what are the sub points, how many conversations, what are the percentage of conversations happening on the site, and here's where you can click in and go join that conversation or whatever.
Yeah. Love
Um,
that.
yeah, so this is we have not we're working with an institute that has already done this, but we haven't integrated into the site yet. But that's coming. That's going to come in the next few months, and I'm very excited for the potential that's going to come from this because it's kind of like with chess, AI just beats humans, but humans plus AI beat AI.
Mm,
And usually, my understanding of it, someone who's an AI researcher can surely correct me on this, but is that essentially the AI is not very good at opening moves. Like it's responsive, and so essentially the human does the opening moves, and then the AI goes and wins.
yeah.
Um, so there's something similar here where uh, in terms of meaning making, like human plus AI is just going to be quite phenomenal, I think. And a lot of what it's going to be is us kind of setting the stage and doing the opening moves that allow or point in the right direction.
Yeah. Yay. Yeah, I think the main feeling on West was just like, cool. Now, Jordan, get off this podcast and go back to work. Go make it
Exactly.
happen.
Hell yeah.
Yeah,
It feels so good. It feels so good. I mean, it is, and I do, and I love work. I really do.
yeah.
Even though it's not always a fun thing to be whatever it is that I'm doing, designing Figmas or doing some sort of project management or whatever. It's so meaningful. And that's another answer to your question is simply like the the way that I needed to find meaning, the way that I find meaning is by picking um, things that are meaningful, that are worth doing, that I don't know how to do yet, that I've never
Mhm.
done.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that people could take away from this is that um, hopefully you guys listening are taking away that like you can it may be difficult. It may require wild self transformation. It may require being more pragmatic or more visionary or some other polarity that you're not used to. But we as a species can tackle these like seemingly hopeless, impossible problems,
Mhm.
right? In some way, like you could look at what I'm doing and be like, what a fucking idiot! Like you're gonna take some of the most successful, well funded companies in the entire world and go head to head with them, like there's no way you can succeed. And to be honest, if I was coming from that mindset, I would agree. And fortunately, I'm not coming from that mindset. I'm like, I'm solving a different problem and I'm building on everything that they've created so far. And I'm learning so much from them.
And I advocate for one thing that I feel like a broken record about, but it feels part of my soul mission is to just make the world a more beautiful place. I had this sense of even if the Titanic is sinking, can we play beautiful music as we're,
Mm,
grieving our last moments? And I signed up for UpTrust. I haven't spent much time on it. I've had a crazy busy week since our last call. Um, but just in my first browse through the system, I was like, wow, okay, there's really something here. And I really want it to be beautiful, aesthetically beautiful. Like I want a feminine being goddess to like go in there and just make it this place where I feel
yeah.
as if not beautiful in a way where it's like it's grabbing my attention and it's wanting me to pay, it's using like manipulative color choices and stuff, but beauty in a sense where it reminds me that there's a softness to intimacy and it almost
Mm,
encourages on a very subtle subconscious level vulnerability because we're already
mm,
touched just by being in that ecosystem.
yeah. Yeah. Amen. Yeah. I think, I don't know how you feel about Substack, but I think they do an
Yeah.
incredible job with this kind of beauty. Like it's often subtle. You may not notice it if you're not paying attention, but it's like every design choice is like, mm,
Yeah. 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 I remember getting my first Apple laptop when I was in fourth grade because I had dyslexia and my teachers convinced my parents, my teachers convinced my parents I should get a laptop to use spell check, which is funny. But I remember getting it in the car. I was out of my dad's office, and he ran in to do something at work real quick, and I took out the box and I opened it up, and it was like this moment's being like, it's so beautiful, you know? And of
Hmm.
course, now we
Yeah.
look back and it's like such an ugly old, 1997 laptop or whatever. But in that time, it was just like this artifact of art.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, I'm with you. And I believe it'll come. I mean,
Yeah.
I can tell you like that just actually today, we are um like there's a designer that's literally, redesigning, looking over things. And so yeah, when like you and anyone who gets on the site will notice that it'll continue to change. I mean, there's so much that's being built and being updated, and a lot of it has been like, okay, we just got to get it out there and start running tests. And that's one of the reasons why I'm excited to talk about it and get out there. Like, yes, I want this podcast to be for itself. You know, people listen to it and they come away like we were talking about with a deep transmission of appreciating beauty or love or just loving us or feeling us love you guys listening or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's enough. And I hope people get on because I think that there's a lot that we can do through getting a lot of people on, and there's just so many experiments that we'll be able to run with bigger groups of people.
Yeah.
So yeah, you'll see tons of change, and hopefully it'll just continue to get more beautiful.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I give my highest recommendation to anything that Jordan puts his hands on. Yeah, I've been really impressed by my experiences in containers and projects that you've held and invited me into in the past. So I have no doubt that UpTrust it's already successful in a sense. Like I already feel
Mm,
that its initiative has changed me. It's changed me through our two conversations, and in a way, it's like hooray, we crossed the finish line, and now let's run
mm.
like the rest of life, because we love running. And there's a deep,
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know, the metaphor doesn't work, but whatever, folks, go sign up.
I
Or
love
don't,
it.
or don't if you don't want to. But you should.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Especially if you're willing to be, if you're excited to be part of creating and like seeding. I was thinking just last night, I was chatting with one of my devs of like, this kind of first crew that comes on the platform is like the starter for the sourdough. And
Mm.
it's like, it's gonna, I don't know if my wife is making sourdough from scratch.
Yeah,
And so
my
it's like,
my housemate makes 2 loaves a day.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So yeah, like that, it's like that, that's it. Like people who want to be a part of that, like what is the culture on, you go to,
That's cool.
for most people, if you go to uh, Instagram, it's like it's like basically you're getting a feeling of what's good in life, or what someone thinks is good. They're trying to promote what's good for themselves.
Mm.
If you go to X, it's more like hot takes or something like that. And so it's like, what happens when you go to UpTrust? What is it that you're getting and that you're receiving? And so if you're excited to be a part of that and you're willing to put up with some like growing pains and like being under construction and it's going to keep changing and hopefully getting more beautiful, but for now being a little ugly in some places, like then please come join us. We will be grateful um, and you'll be grateful. It'll go both ways. It'll be one way.
Nice. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jordan. I
Thank you
appreciate
so
you.
much, Tucker. I appreciate you so much. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited. Excited to get this out there.